Hey friends, welcome to Flight Test. I'm Josh. Today we're going to be showing you how to build the EZ Voyager. Now the EZ Voyager is part of our 3-pack series of EZ Space Flight. Now this is a STEM curriculum that's going to take you all through not only different aircraft configurations, but different aircraft experiences inspired with an awesome space twist. Now our goal for this is to build this as a free flight chuck glider, and then later on show you how to move over to RC links so you can have fun flying through the air through radio control. Everything for the airframe that you're going to need is included in the kit. The only tools you're going to need is actually going to be your tape, your hot glue gun, and maybe a razor blade. Let's go ahead and get our materials in order and we'll get started. So for our EZ Voyager, we're going to be using the plank that you see right here. Let's go and pop out all the pieces, and then we'll go ahead and identify each one and start assembly. We have all of our parts popped out. We're going to go ahead and identify each and every one of them for you here. First, we have the main wing of our EZ Voyager. We have the lower body. We have our 2 elevators, and then we have our center body. Let's go and put our attention towards the main wing and the lower body first to seam up the center here because it was folded in the kit. We want to make that piece a solid straight structure. So you can see as it comes in the kit here that this is actually 2 pieces here. Before we peel any paper and get it ready, we're going to put a simple bead of glue right down the center. And then we're going to hold this flat up against the table. I like to then come across with a scrap piece of foam and wipe off any excess. Give this about a minute to dry before we move on to the next step, which is going to be removing the paper. Alright, so our glue is now dry to the touch. Let's go ahead and peel off the paper. Just take it nice and slow. If you peel too fast, it'll rip, but don't worry, you can always come back and grab those extra pieces and pull it off. There we go. And we're going to flip this over on the back and remove this whole piece of paper as well. So you're going to notice that there's a score line that's really faint on this side. We're going to go ahead and open this up, but before we do, we're going to reinforce the back side with a piece of tape. All we simply need to do is just put it right about here. I like to go just on the one side of our notch that's going to hold our motors and lay it down. Do this on both sides. I'm using 2-inch tape. If you want, you can also use just 3/4 inch tape. You're just going to have to get it closer to where that center seam is. There we go. Just carefully flip it over. Then you can use a pair of scissors or a razor blade to trim off the excess. Now we're going to go ahead and put our attention towards that center crease right in the middle, and I'm just going to go ahead and take the tip of my ballpoint pen. You can also use your fingernail and write it right there, fold it up. Same on the other side here. If you don't want that in there, you can just kind of retract it if you wish. So included in our kit is a little tiny dihedral gauge. This is going to give us the right amount of dihedral. All we need to do is slide this on, just like that. And then we're going to come back with a piece of tape and reinforce that top here. We're going to only use tape right now because glue is going to give us a lot of extra weight, and we want this to have as much performance as possible. We want to build these planes light, but also strong. The tape is going to give us both. There we go, just lay this right there. Press this flat against the table. And once again, we're going to cut off that excess. 1. And there's 2. Same process on the other side. Just want to kind of bend this up, making sure it naturally holds the same amount of deflection that we're looking to get with the gauge. And it does. Press this flat against the table. And once again, we're going to cut off that excess. Our main portion of the wing is now done. Let's go ahead and put our attention towards the center body. So just like our top wing here, we're going to have a center seam that we want to glue. Let's go ahead and do that now. Same process as before. Thin bead of glue right on the top. Push it down. Then we use a scrap piece of paper, scrape off the excess. Give it about 30 seconds to a minute to dry, and then we'll remove the paper carefully. Take your time when removing the paper on the both sections here and here because it's going to be very delicate. And next we're going to remove the paper just on the very outer part of the body that's going to bend vertical. I'm just going to make sure real quick that this is scored down enough just above the paper so that we can crack this open and fold it 180 degrees like that. Once we've done that, we're going to take our razor blade and we're going to cut a 45-degree bevel on each side making sure that we don't go through the paper in the center. And there's 2. Now, if you're uncomfortable with using razor blades, you can also use a piece of sandpaper and sand that bevel in as well. When we do our 2 bevel cuts, we should be able to bend this up 90 degrees flat against the table, just like we see right here. Once we're happy we can get to that full 90 degrees, let's go ahead and put a bead of glue right down in the middle. We'll hold this up 90 degrees for about 45 seconds to a minute. All right, let's do the same process on the other side now. I'm just gonna take our razor blade, make sure that we have that score cut down as close to the paper as possible without going through. Fold it over 180 degrees. And oftentimes I like to use my razor blade and hold it not at an angle that's 90 degrees to the foam, but hold it at a very gradual angle, right above the paper, and cut right through. Same process, always make sure that you keep your fingers far away from the edge of the blade. There we go. We'll take it right back to the table. Up 90 degrees, that's perfect. A little bit of glue. And we'll hold it at 90 degrees and let the glue fully dry. So at this point now, we can carefully remove the paper on the other side. Once the glue is fully dried, just go on both sides here, peel that back, take your time. If you do accidentally crack it, no big deal. You can always glue it back together or tape it back together. And just carefully roll it right around here, and you can see that this makes a very nice strong joint that we don't have to reinforce with any tape. Part of the success with making these aircraft fly so well is making them as light but yet as strong as possible. So take your time making sure you don't use too much glue and that all your joints are nice and clean. All right, the lower section of our body is now done. Let's go ahead and put our attention towards the vertical portion of the fuselage. So for our fuselage, we're gonna have 3 pieces that you see right here. We have our main center piece here, and we also have our doublers right here. The first thing we're going to want to do is peel all the paper off of this piece, but we're going to be leaving the paper on mostly on these 2 pieces right here. So just peel this piece for now. And for this portion right here, all we need to do is remove the paper on the center section right here, but we'll leave the paper on both sides of the rest of them. I'm going to go ahead and cut out this little battery compartment if you haven't already done so. Next, with the lower portion facing towards us and down to the left, we're going to put the doubler on and line up the main battery hole and also the battery pass-through. Once we're happy with the way that looks, we're going to go ahead and use our hot glue gun, put a bead of glue right around the perimeter here. And then repeat that step where we line it up. Next, we're going to fold this around. And you're going to notice that the portion that we peeled here is easily going to roll around, and all we need to do is line this and kind of roll this forward until it lines up with the slot of our battery. Notice that you're going to have a nice round nose right in the front here and a little bit of a gap. This is going to act kind of like a bumper and help protect our airframe in case you have an impact with the ground. Once we're happy and we make sure that we can fold this over so that our battery slots line up exactly, we don't want this to be rotated back where the battery slots are uneven. We're going to go ahead and open this up. Some glue down, and then the same process as before. We're just going to fold this over, line up the battery compartment, and press it down into place. Our last piece that's going to go on is going to be the doubler for the back portion, and that's simply going to line up with the back contour to the top surface of the wing here, and you're going to notice that it's going to leave an open space right here. That's where our control board is going to go in the future. A little bit of glue. Slide it back and forth, and then press it down into place. We can now take the center section of our fuselage and join it to our main wing. Now the important thing is you're going to see 2 slots here, and that's where our motors are going to go. Make sure those are pointing up towards the nose. When you put this on, you're going to notice that the rear contour drops down right at the trailing edge of your wing. If that's how it looks, you did it right. Once we're happy with that fit, I'm just going to put a bead of glue right down the center section here. Kind of walk around both sides. There we go. And then we'll simply press it into place and then hold it till it's fully cured. Now if you glued everything properly, you should see that the front fuselage here is vertical to the main portion of the wing. Next we're going to join the rear portion of the body to the back. So slide it in and move it until it fully engages that tab. Once we're happy with the way that fits, I'm going to go ahead and place some glue right on the center section that we previously glued here. And I'm going to slide it into place. Press that in right over that center line. We're going to hold this here for about 45 seconds to a minute until the glue is dry. Once the glue is dry, I'm just going to come back here and give a little bit of reinforcement on one side and use a scrap piece of foam to wipe off the excess. Now that the lower body's put on, let's go ahead and put our attention towards the rear elevators of the Voyager. Now you're going to notice that the rear elevators here actually have a score cut like you see here. This is going to be so it can actually bend up ever so slightly to match the up deflection that we need to make this plane fly properly. This is going to be our horizontal stabilizer providing stability and pitch. This is going to be our elevator providing the right amount of positive angle of attack to make the plane fly well. So if you haven't already, let's go ahead and just remove this little notch right here. And next we're going to peel this top surface on both sides. And then lay this down just like we see here. And we're going to put it into place. A little friction fit. Like that. Now we're not going to glue this down quite yet. All we're simply going to do is come in with a little piece of tape and lock in that angle. Once we've locked in that angle, we can carefully remove it. Make sure you don't break your tail surface here. There we go. We'll cut off the excess. Then we can remove the lower piece. Now normally I'd be putting a piece of tape to reinforce this, but because this is going to be glued on these portions here, I don't really need to worry about it. All I simply need to do is to go back, put a bead of glue right on the center sections here, and then press it right back down in place. Let's do the same process now on the other side. And next we're going to peel this top surface and then lay this down just like we see here, and we're going to put it into place. All we're simply going to do is come in with a little piece of tape and lock in that angle. Then we can remove the lower piece. Put a bead of glue right on the center sections here, and then press it right back down in place. So now that we have our complete body done, we're going to go ahead and glue on these little motor pods. Now these motor pods are going to be needed whether you're flying this as a free flight or as an RC airplane. The reason is we need lots of weight up in the front for the proper center of gravity. This plane is not a conventional flying airplane. It actually flies a little bit better as a radio controlled airplane than it does as a free flight. But if you get your center of gravity right, she flies great. We're just going to go ahead and give this a friction fit here, and it'll slide in, and you're going to notice that it doesn't come off. It's just nice and tight, and it grips it really well. The reason we're going to do this is because later when we go back to put our motors on it, it's going to be a lot easier to tape the motors on these pods, why they can be detached and then glue them in later. So let's go ahead and just friction fit this in. Our center of gravity is going to be right around the center section of this battery. You can see that it's quite heavy right now. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and take our battery, or a couple nuts, may need a couple more than that, and we're just going to tape them right up in the front right here. You may want to move your center of gravity back a little bit or forward a little bit based on how you want your EZ Voyager to fly. That's all up to you and all on how you build your airplane. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this out. I'm going to meet up with my good friend Stefan. We're going to play catch, adjust a little bit, and then we're going to come back in here and make it radio controlled. So like I said before, this takes a lot more weight than any of the other planes in the EZ Starship series. But that's okay. You ready?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. One more time.
Nice.
Oh, that's nice.
Much good.
Much gooder.
Much gooder.
Oh, got him. Caught him. And she's gonna fly high out anyways.
Yeah. There we go. Awesome. All right, so she flies great as a glider here. Our next step to go back is we're gonna remove these nuts right here. We're gonna put on our electronics, and then we're gonna go fly at RC. All right, we have all our electronics ready to go. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pop off our 2 motor mounts that you see here that we were using earlier for nose weight. And we're first gonna start with our right motor here. We're gonna mount our right motor so it mounts just like you see here. So when it mounts in, the wires are gonna go towards the center of the body. An easy way to tell what's your right and left is you're gonna point the nose away from you, just like you see, like you're flying in the cockpit. And then at that point, your right side's gonna be your right, your left side's gonna be your left. So in this case, when I flip this over, this is my right side. And what I'm gonna do for this here is I'm just gonna use 2 little small drops of glue on both sides. It's real easy to pop it off of the wood later. And I'm gonna press and hold this in place. The most important thing that you want to make sure is that both flaps of your motor mount are flat against the wood. Next, we're going to pass our little wire lead right through. And then we're going to remove our control board just by lifting up this tab and lifting it straight up. We can go ahead and put this to the side. And then we're going to take our control board, and with our battery lead facing towards the nose, we're going to pass the lead right on through. It's really important that you have that battery lead facing towards the nose because that's going to give the control board the right orientation so it flies the motors properly. There we go. It's a lot easier to do this while it's off. Just going to go ahead and plug this in white to white. You can now nestle this down in like you see here. Make sure that all the extra wire lead that you have is pointing towards here. Once we have our motor connection, we're going to pull all of our wire on the other side of the wing. I'm just going to put 2 little drops of glue here and here, and then press this in place. You can also use double-sided tape if you want to be able to remove this later as well. Just make sure before every flight that you make sure this control board is properly fastened. Next, we're going to go ahead and fit this right down in here, except this time we're going to glue it. I'm just going to put a drop of glue here and a drop of glue here. Press it all the way in, hard up against the foam. Little tiny piece of tape is all you need to dress this up. Get that pulled away from the wires, stick it down. All right, same process on the other side here. We're gonna mount our motor so it's just on the inside, facing towards the fuselage. And then we can drop a couple drops of glue and glue it in place. This time we don't have to pop it through the body, we just gotta line up our pins, red to red, and pop it in. 2 little drops of glue. You can always come back with another bead of glue on the side if you wish to make it a little bit stronger. And hold it in place. And then I'm gonna dress this one up here, just kind of bring it around the front. Dress this one up as well. A couple little pieces of tape. And for this model as well, our battery placement is going to decide and help us with our center of gravity. So we're going to move that battery forwards and backwards to get the best center of gravity possible. So we'll just slide this in. Put my favor up towards the nose here. And then we're going to check our center of gravity. We've installed our 3 AA's into the back of our transmitter. We're going to go ahead and make our connection with our battery. Just line up the tabs. We're going to turn this on to get a rapid flashing red light. And with our throttle closed all the way down on this throttle, we're going to turn this on. And you're going to notice that this goes to a slow flashing light while this is rapid. Once we go to full and then back down to close, you're going to see both lights go solid. At this point, our motors are going to work. So we're going to test our motors out to make sure we have the proper orientation when we give this throttle. We should hear resistance against it, trying to turn it back to level. If that's working, you did everything correctly. The last step I'd strongly recommend for our first flights, unless you have a very wide open area and you don't mind slow turns, is press the race button one time to make your transmitter flash. This is going to give us the ability to do sharper turns and have a great flight experience. At this point, we're ready to go outside and take it for a flight. All right, so we're all ready to fly. Our center of gravity is established. Our battery's all the way up forward here. We got it running. Again, one last little tip for advice here. Let's go ahead and take this off in high rates unless you have a very wide open area that you want to fly in here. You can always choose to go low rates later. We're gonna go about 3/4 throttle, give her a launch.
There it is.
There we are. Friends, thank you so much for being part of the Flight Test family. I can't wait to see what you guys learned from building these 3 different designs, but also mostly what you're going to be creating in the future from what you've learned from them. Thank you again for being part of the team. We'll see you next time.